For over half a century, we have been told a very specific story about our own origins. It is a narrative that begins in the savannas of East Africa, where the first modern humans supposedly stood up and began a singular, heroic trek across the globe roughly 60,000 years ago. The map of human evolution is almost always drawn with bold red arrows, all firing out from a single center south of the Sahara, treating every other region as a mere hallway or a temporary gas station. But what if that entire map is missing its most important piece? What if the hallway was actually a long-lived homeland where our ancestors truly forged their intellect and identity? When we lay the archaeological and fossil records side by side, without a pre-committed bias toward a single origin narrative, a different picture emerges. Between 400,000 and 200,000 years ago, the most coherent package of advanced human behavior, distinctive technology, and sapiens-leaning anatomy does not appear in the African interior. Instead, it flourishes in the Levant, the Mediterranean crossroads of the Near East. This region was not just a corridor for weary migrants, it was a core zone of innovation. This matters because the current out-of-Africa dogma often ignores any evidence that suggests humans became modern anywhere else. But the dirt doesn't lie. If we look at the Levant with fresh eyes, we see a population that wasn't just surviving, they were thriving, innovating, and staying put for hundreds of millennia. This isn't just about a change in location. It's about a change in how we define ourselves as a species. Are we a species of restless wanderers who got lucky? Or are we the product of long-term, stable innovation in the Mediterranean heartland? Much of the traditional narrative was built on genetic studies that pointed toward a common ancestor in Africa. But genetics is only one part of the story. Archaeology tells us who we became. While the genes were swirling in Africa, the behaviors we call modern were already being perfected in the caves of the Levant. To understand this shift, we have to look at the software of the prehistoric world: stone tools. The key to recognizing the Levant's unique role lies in a technological tradition known as the Achulo-Yabrudian Cultural Complex, or the AYCC. This wasn't a vague, experimental phase of stone toolmaking. It was a complete, sophisticated system, characterized by systematic blade production, specialized scrapers, and a life organized around central, permanent hearths. If you were to take a cross-section of a Neanderthal's femur or humerus, you would find that the outer wall, the cortical bone, is extraordinarily thick. In engineering terms, they possessed a much higher moment of inertia, allowing their limbs to withstand immense bending and twisting forces that would snap a modern human's bones like dry kindling. This wasn't just a random mutation. It was a structural necessity for a life of extreme physical trauma. Their internal marrow cavities were often narrower, meaning there was more dense bone tissue per square inch of their frame. Imagine a group of humans 350,000 years ago. While their cousins in other parts of the world were still using bulky, multi-purpose hand axes, the people of the Levant were already refining the blade. A blade is more than just a sharp stone. It represents a higher level of cognitive efficiency. It provides more cutting edge per pound of raw material. It requires foresight, a specific mental template, and the ability to teach complex motor skills to the next generation. This isn't just a change in toolkits. It's a change in how the human brain processes the world. It shows a move towards standardization, which is the precursor to complex language and organized society. These humans were thinking in terms of efficiency and future-proofing their survival. Nowhere is this clearer than at Kesem Cave, located just outside modern-day Tel Aviv. Occupied as far back as 420,000 years ago, Kesem is one of the most behaviorally revealing sites in the world. It shatters the image of the primitive caveman. Its inhabitants didn't just stumble upon fire, they mastered it. In the center of the cave, archaeologists found a massive, repeatedly used hearth. This wasn't a small campfire for one night, it was the literal and social anchor of their lives. Around this fire, they didn't just eat, they socialized, they taught, and they organized their space. They had specific areas for butchery and other areas for toolmaking. This is the archaeological signature of a modern home. But the most shocking discovery at Qesem involves their diet. These people were hunting fallow deer, but they weren't just eating the meat and moving on. They were selectively processing carcasses, focusing on high-calorie marrow and fat. Evidence suggests they may have even stored skin-covered bones to keep the marrow fresh for weeks, effectively creating the world's first canned goods. Think about the implications of delayed consumption. In a world where every predator is looking for a meal, choosing not to eat your food immediately requires an immense level of social security and trust. It requires a belief that you will be safe enough tomorrow to enjoy what you saved today. This level of planning is the hallmark of a modern mind, and it was happening 300,000 years before the textbooks say it was possible for Homo sapiens. This suggests that the cognitive leap we associate with modern humans wasn't a sudden mutation in Africa. It was a slow, cultural evolution sparked by the stable, resource-rich environment of the Levant. Furthermore, the Qesem people practiced selective hunting, targeting specific age groups of deer to ensure the herd's survival. They weren't just part of the ecosystem, they were starting to manage it. While tools tell us what these people did, their bodies tell us who they were. Perhaps the most stubborn evidence lies in something much smaller than a cave: human teeth. Teeth are biological time capsules. They resist the ravages of time better than bone and record population history with remarkable fidelity. When researchers examined the teeth found at Qesem, Mislia, and Zutia, they expected to find the thick enamel and bulging roots typical of Neanderthals. Instead, they found teeth that were small, gracile, and shared a modern pattern. These teeth show a trend toward the dietary efficiency and facial grace we see in humans today. Back in 2010, when these dental studies were first released, they were met with fierce resistance. The academic establishment was so invested in the idea that sapiens could only come from the south that they dismissed the Qesem teeth as incomplete. But what we see in these teeth is evolutionary continuity. The 400,000-year-old teeth from Qesem look like ancestors to the 180,000-year-old teeth from Mislia, which in turn look like the ancestors of the famous 100,000-year-old School and Kafse humans. There is no sudden break where one population disappears and a new one arrives from Africa. It is a local, Mediterranean lineage that was refining its anatomy over hundreds of millennia. They were cooking their food, which led to smaller teeth and daintier jaws, the very faces we see in the mirror today. Cooking allowed our ancestors to spend less energy chewing and more energy growing brains. The teeth of the Levant are the physical proof of this transition. Qesem does not stand alone. It belongs to a regional world that includes sites like Taboon Cave on Mount Carmel. Taboon is legendary in archaeology because its layers of dirt and history are incredibly deep and undisturbed. At Taboon, you can see the history of humanity stacked like a layer cake. At the bottom, you have the heavy hand axes of the Acheulean. Then, you see a smooth, local transition into the Achulo-Yabrudian. There is no sign of a cultural reset, no layer of ash indicating a war, no abandonment of the cave. The people who lived there simply got better at what they did. This continuity is a direct challenge to the idea of failed dispersals. For decades, whenever a sapiens fossil was found in the Levant that predated the 60,000-year mark, it was labeled a failed migration, a group that left Africa too early and died out. But a population that stays in one place for 200,000 years, evolving its tools and its biology, isn't a failure. It's a success story. The people of Tabun and Kesem didn't die out. They became the people of Skul and Kafse. Why have we been so quick to call them failures? It is because of a narrative pre-commitment. If you believe humans must have come from Africa late in history, then any evidence to the contrary must be an anomaly. But when you look at the 25 meters of sediment at Tabun, you don't see anomalies. You see a home. You see people who weathered ice ages and droughts without leaving. They weren't tourists. They were owners. Consider the Zatia frontal bone, often called the Galilee man. Found in the 1920s and dated to roughly 250,000 years ago, this fragment of a skull has been a mystery for a century. Traditionalists tried to force Zatia into the Neanderthal category, but it didn't fit. Its brow ridge wasn't right, its forehead was too high, and its architecture was far more consistent with early Homo Sapiens. Zatia represents a bridge. It is part of a Mediterranean population that was diversifying. They weren't quite the humans of today, but they were leaning toward us. When you combine Zutia's skull with Mislia's jaw and Kesem's teeth, the anomaly becomes a sequence. We are looking at a regional evolution that was happening in parallel to, or even ahead of, the developments in Africa. The shape of our faces, the high forehead, the reduced brow, was being forged in the Levant, while the rest of the world was still thumping heavy stones. As we move forward in time, to about 120,000 years ago, we arrive at the world-famous sites of Skul and Kafse. These contain the earliest deliberate burials of modern humans outside of Africa. Here, we find bodies placed in specific positions, accompanied by grave goods like the jaw of a wild boar or marine shells. We see the extensive use of red ochre, a pigment used for symbolism. In the old narrative, these behaviors were imported from Africa. But the foundation for this symbolic life was laid hundreds of thousands of years earlier in the hearths of Kesem and the long-term residencies of Tabun. Symbolism requires a level of social stability that only comes from living in a place for a very long time. The Skul and Kafse humans weren't migrants discovering symbolism for the first time. They were the heirs to a 300,000-year-old Levantine tradition. They didn't bring these ideas with them. They grew them from the soil they had inhabited for generations. To make this tangible, we can look at the experiences of the researchers at Kesem. When they first found the teeth in 2010, the atmosphere was electric, but also terrifying. They knew what they had found would challenge everything. One researcher described the moment they realized the teeth weren't Neanderthal. It was a moment of profound silence in the lab. They weren't looking at a cousin species. They were looking at a mirror. Imagine the life of a young girl in the Levant 300,000 years ago. Her world is a lush Mediterranean forest. She spends her days learning the precise angle to strike a flint core to produce a blade. She watches her elders use fire, not just to cook, but to heat-treat stone to make it easier to work. She knows that when the tribe moves to the summer hunting grounds, they will return to this specific cave because it is where her ancestors' hearth still sits. This is the reality of the Levantine homeland. It is a story of belonging, not wandering. Then consider the Mislia maxilla. When it was found, it was stuck in a rock-like cement of bone and sediment. It took years of painstaking work to reveal that this jawbone, merely 200,000 years old, had a chin and tooth structure that would be indistinguishable from a person walking the streets today. These aren't just fossils. They are family members. They represent a lineage that survived through ingenuity and community. As we reach the end of this journey through the deep time of the Mediterranean, we are left with a new understanding of our species. The Levant was not a corridor. It was not a gateway. It was a home. For 400,000 years, humans here were refining their tools, mastering fire, caring for their dead, and evolving their very faces to look like ours. We have not been missing the evidence for our origins. We have simply been looking for it in the wrong place. The lesson we take from the caves of Kesen, Tabun, and Mislia is one of persistence and adaptation. It tells us that being modern is not a destination we reached 60,000 years ago. It is a process that has been happening for almost 500,000 years. It teaches us that innovation is born from stability, from the hearth, the home, and the community. We are not just a species of restless wanderers. We are a species that knows how to plant roots. We are the descendants of people who looked at the Mediterranean horizon 400,000 years ago and decided that this was where they belonged. Our story is not just one of moving out. It is a story of settling in, of becoming human by degrees, one fire and one blade at a time. As you look at your own reflection, remember that your face, your small teeth, your high forehead, your chin, wasn't a sudden gift from a migration. It was a slow, beautiful legacy from the Levant. The history of our species is still being written. Every year, a new tooth or a new tool is pulled from the Mediterranean soil that pushes our story further back. If you found this journey into the forgotten cradle insightful, consider what else we might have missed by looking in only one direction. What do you think? Is it time to officially recognize the Levant as a co-cradle of our species? Let's discuss in the comments below.